What's good? What's good, party people? It's Coach Mark. First off, I apologize. My furnace just started cranking. And then two, I've been having some issues with StreamYard. So I decided to just film this. So you're getting the same video. We're just not doing it live. So obviously everyone's going to be watching the replay, which is totally fine. But you can comment and I can answer questions in the comments or send you a message or whatever. But again, my name is Coach Mark Roberts, owner of Journeyman Fitness, helping you guys get into great shape even if you're stuck at a desk all day. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some world-class strategies for getting in great shape. I've got 5 big ones. As I was preparing for today, I started having not just 5, but many strategies that have been employed by myself, by friends of mine, by coaches that I've hired, that I know other people have used, et cetera, et cetera. So I may do this like a part 2 in the future, but these are 5 that I thought were really important right now that I'd love to share with you. I think that for most people who are just starting, or maybe more importantly, struggling with working out, eating better, getting in great shape, they get really fixated on the details, like the knowledge, like how much protein do I need for this? How many carbs, how much fat, hormones, metabolism stuff. They get really into the science, and I am guilty of this. They get really into the science, get really into the nitty-gritty, the details of how that stuff is going to help you. But then when it comes to execution, it's just not there. Like, for instance, a good thing is, I really want to work with clients who track their food well. And obviously, the best way to track your food is to weigh your food and then log it into some kind of app. MyFitnessPal, Carbon, Trainerize, Fitbit, whatever it is. There's some people who don't know anything about that. There's some people who know a lot about it. And then there's a very small percentage of people who actually log their food every single day. So for most people who know how to log food, and this is myself, it's very easy to log your food like 3 out of the 7 days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you get into a nice routine. And then all of a sudden, Thursday, it starts getting a little bit busy. You're preparing for the weekend. And then, maybe a couple of meals are slightly different because, hey, you forgot to pack a lunch. And so you can't just copy and paste the stuff from Wednesday into Thursday. And then Saturday is completely thrown off because your kid's sick and there's some family in town and blah, blah, whatever that is. And so all of a sudden, this happens a few weeks in a row where you know how to track your food. You know how to log it into MyFitnessPal or whatever. And you do log it into FitnessPal. So in your mind, you're like, I know how to do this. But when we're looking at the execution, what we're seeing is, are you actually executing on the things that you know? And the answer is no. So when we talk about strategies, we're talking about the execution of the stuff that you know, okay? And these are either executing on ideas that you know, like how should you do it so that it actually gets done, or the mindset shift that gets you kind of out of your head and into executing procedure. Now, if you're trying to get into shape, and I'm going to kind of go into some of these things, you need help. You need some sort of guidance. You need somebody who's, maybe your goal is to lose 80 pounds and you've only ever lost 20 pounds before. And you need some help. I am your man. I'd love to help. All the stuff that we go over today when you work with me, we go into a deep dive, we execute on it, and then every single week we're getting better and better and better. We're never going to get perfect because that's not a thing. If you need help on how to do this, especially if this is your first time doing a major weight loss project like losing 80 pounds or 30 pounds or whatever it is, I'm your man. Write a comment, strategy, and we'll talk about what are some strategies that you can employ that work out custom for you. All right. So the first thing is, this is not actually the strategy. This is just actually like the stuff I want you. It's like, do you actually know what are the things that you've got to do in terms of how much you're eating and the training and like if you're not quite sure like how weight loss occurs, if you're not exactly sure how to get in better shape, if you're not exactly sure how to lower your blood pressure, like that is important to know, and it's actually kind of part of the foundation. But the reality is, if you don't know how to do it, then we've got to learn it. But then number two, that's also a really, really quick part of the procedure. If this kind of lack of knowledge is getting in your way, just know that it is not a high hurdle. It is not a Mount Everest. It is like stepping up on the curb. It'll trip you if you don't know, but the reality is kind of learning all the things that are going to get you to lose weight is a very, very quick process. And at first, it's just the basics. And then if you get more and more detailed, again, it's really, really quick to kind of learn these things. So if you don't know how to lose weight, then obviously you need to learn, but that's really quick, okay? Now, once you kind of know these things, or you know the basics, you know the most important things, whatever that means for you, then now what we can do is we can get into the 5 high-level strategies that are going to help you. Again, these are not exhaustive. I have a lot of ideas, a lot of strategies that I want to share with you, but I just limited it to 5. Frankly, I was going to start off with 3, and then I was like, yeah, I gotta go. I had four that were really good. I was like, all right, I'm just going to make it 5, make it a nice round number. So, number 1. Let's do this. So I've made this all here, and then let's go there. Boom. The first thing that you've got to do is, obviously, knowing how to lose weight is important, but you need to build out a plan for you. Okay? Not just, hey, listen, I'm going to have chicken and broccoli every single day. It's you've got to be realistic. You've got to have a juggling act between how you think you should eat, how you actually are going to eat, and then put that into like kind of a juggling act with what's actually going to get you to lose weight. So for instance, a good example is, let's say that I know that I should have the same exact foods every single day because then I can guarantee that I'm going to lose weight. But I got my kids' party this Saturday and I want to have 2 beers with everybody while we're grilling out in the backyard. You can make those 2 beers work, and this is just an example. You can make those 2 beers work, and if normally you would just have like 5, 6, or 7 beers plus, unlimited food from the grill and yada yada, that's a major improvement, and that can lead to obviously greater success because it's actually something that you want to do, right? So the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to take those 3 things, what you should do, what you want to do, and then the things that are actually going to get you the progress, that juggling match. And then you've got to create a plan, a long-term plan, not just like, what am I doing tomorrow, but what am I going to do over the next 12 weeks? And you've got to write it out devoid of emotion. So this is so devoid of emotion, it's like if you are emotional when you're writing this plan, and a metaphor for this would be like if I went devoid of emotion would be like if I ate food and then I went food shopping at the supermarket. When you're looking at, okay, should I pick up this? Should I grab that? You're not influenced by how hungry you are, right? Like if you're going down the aisle with the crackers and the snacks and the cereal, you need to pick up some Honey Nut Cheerios and you're really, really hungry and the Oreos are sitting right there. It's very, very easy to grab the Oreos because it's convenient, and 2, it's like, the reward system is super high. But if you're hungry, if you're not getting those pangs of, cravings for certain things, you can just go in and grab the cereal and be like, Oreos. And then you could think a little bit more logically, rationally about, should I actually pick up Oreos? Like, is this going to help me in the long run? Like, I'm not hungry for it right now. Am I going to be hungry for it later? It's going to be good. So you can couch all that stuff. So when you're making a plan absent of emotion, the emotions typically are maybe you're angry about how much weight you've put on, right? Maybe you had a big party over the weekend and you just went totally, just absolutely fucked it up. And, Monday you're like angry at yourself for that party and you're like, I'm going to have chicken and broccoli every single meal and it's going to be you need to be detached, okay? Maybe it's like a Wednesday or a Thursday or something like that. You've got plenty of time. You're going to write down all the details. These are the foods that I'm going to have. These are, the problems. Or maybe you do it over multiple days, right? You do 10 minutes on Monday. You do 20 minutes on Tuesday. You do 5 minutes on Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. And you're kind of adding, iterating, all right, okay, what am I doing on this Saturday? I'm traveling this week and blah. You're coming up with a big plan and then you're committing to it. A good strategy for that would be like try to imagine explaining to a friend who is in a similar situation what you would do in this case. And when you take that emotion out, what you've got is you've got a solid plan. If it's too complicated of an idea, it's going to be hard to express verbally. And then obviously as you're writing it down for this long-term thing, you're starting to get a sense of like, am I just phoning it in? Am I just kind of making shit up? Like where are the gaps in my knowledge and my strategies and all that kind of stuff? For most high-level athletes and coaches, what they're thinking is I can't just plan week to week on how I'm going to improve, particularly with athletes who need to progressively overload, is they're going to have multiple weeks of progression. And they know that, week 1 is going to be kind of not so bad. And then week 2 is going to be a lot harder. And then week 3, like the fatigue is going to start building up. So I need to have that plan in place so that when I wake up on a Thursday and I'm really exhausted, I can just go in and do the thing no matter how I feel. Okay. And then what you're starting to do is you're also starting to get a sense of where, for athletes, they should be hitting certain numbers based upon this week. And then they can kind of gauge a sense like, how are things going? Do I need to adjust it, et cetera, et cetera. So for you, 12-week plan is great, right? Because obviously a lot of those times, like, in terms of eating, you can plan out all of those things. But it could also just be maybe 4 weeks at a time or 3 weeks at a time. It's definitely longer than hey, listen, what am I having like today, tomorrow, and Wednesday? It's going to be, at least a few weeks in advance because 80% of the time you're going to be having the same amount of food. All right. Number 2, when you have that plan, so you've got that plan, devoid of emotion, I'm going to do these things. Here's kind of the 40,000 foot view or the broad strokes or however you want to say it. When you look at it all, you're going to start to notice there are going to be some really, really tough parts. Okay, there's going to be some juggling that you're going to have to do. Some people will call it sacrifices, like, hey, you're going to have to say no to having cake or having to say no to your favorite food, which is pizza, or saying, you're going to have to only have one of these things, whatever that is, there is going to be some moments where it's going to be pretty tough. Okay? What are those moments? A metaphor for this is if you've ever run a mile, if you've ever run a 5K, if you've ever rode a 2K or 5K, or, if you've ever done like a test piece and you are in the middle of it. For a 2K, when you row a 2K is a mile and a quarter. Typically, you're measuring everything in 500-meter increments. So if you're running a mile, your split times are every 400 meters or one lap. For rowing, one lap is 500 meters. So you've got 4 quarters, right? For a mile, it's, again, 4 quarters. For most people, if they run a mile or they row a 2K, whatever it is, the worst part is that third quarter. Okay. And what's terrible about it is obviously the pain and discomfort of, trying to push your limits. But what actually, if you have a plan that you're trying to execute, what actually gets people is they're not ready for how it's supposed to feel. And what happens is that they get into that third quarter and the pain and the discomfort are so great and they're not ready for it. What happens is their mind kind of spirals out of control, and all you can start to fixate on is, it feels really bad right now. I'm not ready for it. Is it going to feel even worse? And then the brain is basically in this like survival mode of like, oh my God, you have to stop. This is too much. This is too much. When you get into these situations and you're ready for how terrible it is, and even you're ready for almost too much pain, and you can tolerate that much, either by it's not scaring you, or you realize it's not going to last, or kind of whatever mental gymnastics you can do to kind of get you to the finish line. A lot of the times, that's the break that you need to execute on the plan. Like, hey, listen, I've practiced, I've hit these numbers. I should go from a 7-minute 2K down to 6:52. Right, I dropped 2 seconds off my split, and I'm going to drop 8 seconds off. And this is going to be the first time I've ever broken 7 minutes. It's going to be incredible. Well, you get 1,000 meters in, you get halfway, right? Which is a little, it's a little bit faster than 3:30. So what is that? So 3:26, and the pain, the lactic acid, the mental anguish really, really sets in. If you're not ready for that, then that's kind of your fault, right? It's not the training's fault. It's the execution on the day. Okay. Same thing with the mile. You're too far away to say like, okay, I can totally empty it out and I'm not going to die. You're in that moment where you're like, this pain is so intense, I may die. Your brain is obviously being very emotional about it. You're not actually going to die. You're going to stop before that happens, but it feels very, very real. If you're ready for those moments when it gets really, really hard, challenging, uncomfortable, however you want to say it, you're ready for it. You've anticipated it. You've visualized it. Well, that is going to allow you to stay out of that anxiety and be solution focused and realize that what you're going through is just purely mind games. You're not actually going to die. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but you know this. So a good example, actual example of this is, like I said, you have a plan. Okay, on this one Saturday, it's my kid's birthday. He's going to a birthday party. There's going to be cake, drinks, snacks, hoagies, like whatever it is. If you commit to, let's say, I'm going to go to this party, I'm going to have a hoagie, I'm going to have a cookie, and then I'm going to have 2 beers, and that's going to be my lunch at this thing. Well, what you need to anticipate is the uncomfortable part is not having the 2 beers. The uncomfortable part is when you get to that point when you want the third. So, if you normally have 6, 7 beers, like I said, and you commit to having 2, well, that uncomfortable part is going to be that moment when you have to say no to number 3. And so what's that going to feel like? What are you worried about? Where's the anxiety coming from? What are the thoughts that are generating that? And so for you, you've got to come up with this game plan for that situation. What are the things that you say? Why are you feeling like that? What are the thoughts are going on? Why, you need to be ready for that moment. And then when you get to that point, you realize like, oh, this is just a sensation. This is just a feeling that I'm having. It's going to pass. I'm not, people aren't going to hate me because I didn't have a beer with them. I'm totally fine. I just feel kind of bummed out that I don't get a third. So you need to be ready for it. You need to anticipate it. You need to understand that this is your brain just kind of feeling lack because of the normal routine that you would go through. Okay? Most of the time when you go through these situations and you say, this is my, worst case scenario, when you write all that stuff down, I'm worried that I'm not going to have fun if I don't have 3 beers. I'm worried I'm not going to have fun if I don't get a little buzz at the function. I'm worried that I'm going to feel like I miss out if I don't have that slice of cake, whatever that is. When you write that out, you realize, because you've kind of you put some space in between you and the emotional part, you realize it's kind of ridiculous that you're making this such a big deal. Okay? So when you make this commitment, when you make this plan and you say, okay, I'm going to have this amount of food, or I'm going to restrict X amount of, I'm only going to have one Oreo every single day instead of, a sleeve of Oreos, you need to be ready for that moment when you are at the fork in the road. I could say no and stick with my plan, or I could say yes and deviate from my plan. You need to be ready for that moment. You need to anticipate, visualize it, so when you get to that point, it's not as intense. Now, a good way of also explaining that is like, imagine that you had to do this 1,000 times. Okay, you get to this party, this is the 1,000th time you had a party. How would you react in that situation? At this point, it's like not a big deal to say no to a certain food and stick to your plan because you've done it 1,000 times. It's like freaking whatever. In that moment, you can realize, hey, listen, I can have that same kind of attitude on the first time. It's the same thing. All right. Now, number 3, we're going to go into it, but remember, if you're reading all this and you're like, oh, these are some really great strategies. I've never had somebody help me out with this. It's always been me. Where do you get ideas like this? Obviously send, in the comments, write strategy, and I'd send you a message, and let's come up with a couple of strategies for you to execute on your plan, help you get in great shape. All right, number 3, want less. One of the things that I never realized for a long time, but I finally got it, was I felt like I had a lot of stuff I had to do during the day. Whether it was in school or at my job or years later or currently. I mean, everyone kind of goes through this. It doesn't really matter what time of my life I'm in. It can feel like, hey, listen, I have a lot of stuff to do. Everything can feel like an emergency. Now, there's a couple of important things to understand. Number 1 is there's this idea of priority. What kind of priority are you assigning to this task, whatever this task is? Going to the bank, mowing your lawn, doing the dishes, sending this email. What kind of priority are you setting? A big mistake that beginners make is that everything has the same priority. They need to accomplish everything. And what happens is that when anything pops up, that gets assigned the same kind of priority as the thing that you're doing right now. And so now you're distracted. You're not accomplishing any of your tasks because you're so non-focused. And then because the thing that you're doing has a high priority, and then now there's a new thing with the same high priority, now you have more stress of the same level. And so what we need to do is we need to understand that not everything has the same kind of priority. We can't assign, and we shouldn't assign, the same level of stress and importance to everything that pops up. Okay, every single email, every single phone call, text message, job at work, responsibility, task at home. Not everything can have that 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 importance, priority, do or die kind of mentality. If you've never set those priorities for yourself, you need to first, this may be the number 1 thing you've got to do, but you've got to understand that just kind of redlining all the time is going to leave you non-productive. It is going to leave you stressed out, and it's going to leave you basically anxiety riddled because there's no letdown. You're basically redlining all the time. So you need to create a priority list. You need to create, obviously a set of values. Hey, these things are important, right? And I think you probably already have an idea of like what's important to you, but like, if your house was on, if your house was on fire, like what would you prioritize? Like those kinds of things, right? If you could only do one thing during the day and everything else you had to put off, what would be that one thing? These little like thought exercises can help really illuminate, like, I can only do one thing. I can only save one person. Or not one person, I'm sorry. I can only prioritize like a few things in my house before it goes up. Like, what would those things be? then you can start to say, oh, okay, well, there's a pecking order now, right? Do I need to answer this text message immediately? Maybe, if it's your mom, or, just you need to create a strategy for attacking things that come up and attacking things during the week, and, creating some kind of response plan so that, again, you're not redlining all the time. Number two, another way of looking at that is that redlining, that desire to accomplish everything, is created by this, like I said, this desire to look a certain way, or, there's a desire. Now, a desire is a contract that you write with yourself that you will be unhappy until you get this thing. All right, so if you have a desire for getting drunk, then basically you're going to be fixated on, how do I consume alcohol until I get drunk? If I have a desire to unwind at the end of the day, and I'm going to have my favorite food because it was really stressful, then I'm going to eat food until I'm no longer stressed, or I feel differently than this, how I'm feeling right now, which is bad. Okay? When you don't have that desire, when you just simply can be those things, right? You can be stressed, you could be this, and you just kind of let yourself go. There's not a real impetus to change it. Then all of a sudden now what you've got is you have less things to occupy your minds. It's not like you're trying to resist it, okay? It's not like, I just got to put off relaxing until, I had a really stressful day. I'm just going to put off relaxing until I accomplish this one thing. Like, that's resistance. That's fighting it, right? So that's really kind of avoiding the thing. What I'm talking about is when you don't have that resistance to stress, but you're like, this is, a good way of saying this is like, I signed up for this, right? So it's okay if I feel stressed. It's totally fine, right? It's like, I'm stressed. I don't have to change it. This is okay. I'm going to survive it. It's all that. Boredom is another one, right? Like your kid is taking a bath and you're just sitting there and you're like, listen, I gotta do this bath. I'm bored right now. I want to be there for my kid, right? This is my priority, is I want to be, forward facing. I want to be with my kid. I'm not just going to go get my phone and like play games to not be bored. I'm just going to sit here and be bored because that's fine. That's like what happens. Kids in the bathtub, playing with toys and the bubbles and all that kind of stuff. I'm really bored, and that's okay. This is just my moment to be with my kid because that's important. That's my priority. My desire for being with my kid, not being distracted by my phone, is really high on my list. So I can sit here with the boredom. Okay? I'm not going to fight it and hate this moment because it's like I'm just going to sit here and just be bored and just kind of enjoy being bored. Right? Because I'm not usually bored during the day. Anyways. Now, one of the corollaries that I wanted to say with this, when you want to want less, when you start to understand, like, if I want less and less and less, I'm starting to really clear out what are the things that I need to prioritize in my life, get done in my life. For instance, when you're trying to eat and train, a lot of the times people get to the end of the day and they're not doing those things. What they could do is they could start to prioritize eating and training, and they have to say no to some things. There are some tasks and jobs and whatever that needs to get done. You can outsource those things. Right? This could be, hey, can I assign this to someone else on my project at work? Can I tell my spouse, hey, listen, I need help with X. Can you help me? Can I hire somebody to do that? A lot of the times when people start eating better and getting in better shape, they outsource the thinking of what they need to do and the creation of their workout plans and the creation of their diet plans to a coach. Because they found out, hey, listen, I can't prioritize making my diet and my training plan and prioritize my work or my kids or whatever, because something's going to suffer and I don't want both to suffer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outsource one of those things. And it's easier to outsource the nutrition, the diet, and the training to a coach who can take a lot off my plate and still help me get those things done. Does that make sense? If you're a boss, having an executive administrator is really helpful because there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen, but freeing up your time by giving it to somebody else, hiring somebody for that reason, can allow you to prioritize the things without letting the quality of the work go down. All right. Number 4, do the boring work. All right. I watched this cool show called 7 Days Out. And it takes, I think there's like 6 episodes, 6 or 7 episodes, 6 or 7 events that go on. One of them was the Kentucky Derby. One of them is the launch of the #1 restaurant in North America or something like that. I can't remember. It was the #1 restaurant, maybe in New York City. One was Best in Show. And so it was like 7 days out, and these are the best of the best. The restaurant one is fantastic. But you have to understand that the flashy bits, the stuff that really gets people's attention, the new specials, the cooking style, how they prepare the duck, right? Like they, dry age the duck so it's extra crispy or whatever. That's the stuff that gets people interested. However, the 80% of 80% of the stuff of the success is all the boring stuff that they do. At no point do you go into this restaurant and do you see the wait staff with food on their clothes. At no point do you see the table set differently for different people, right? The experience from your first time to your second time is the same. The way that they cook food is the same. And so when you watch behind the scenes of, Michelin star rated restaurants, you can see there's like a guy who creates this one particular meal that's ordered a lot, and his job is to make that meal the same every single time. So they're like measuring which way they cut, they weigh all of their ingredients so that if you came 10 times in a row, you're getting 10 times, the same experience those 10 times. McDonald's is very successful because, I'm not saying they're a Michelin star restaurant, but people go to McDonald's because it's convenient, because it's fast, but also because they really enjoy the sandwich or the burger or whatever. And the 10th time that they go there, it's the same thing, right? McDonald's has become really efficient because they prepare the stuff in the same way, almost to the point where, most of the work is done by robots. If you go through your diet and your training and you're not doing the boring things, getting to bed on the same time, drinking the same amount of water every single day, getting in like your salt and your supplements, doing your stretches, communicating with your coach, tracking your food, those are boring things. However, if you don't do the boring things, then you're not going to be able to do the flashy stuff, which is going to elevate your game. You've got to do the boring stuff. Got to get the reps in, got to do the volume, got to do all this stuff. You've got to do the boring things. And you're going to say like, I don't want to go to bed at 9:30 every single night. Well, why not? Well, it's not fun. Well, that's not good enough. All right. This is a world-class strategy. And maybe you say, again, this is all a juggling act, right? Maybe it's, instead of going to bed at 11:30 p.m., but you don't want to go to bed at 9:30, you compromise and say 10:30 is the juggling act that I want, where I balance what I need to do between what I want to do and what's actually going to get me the results that I want. Okay? You've got to do the boring stuff. If you're not doing the boring stuff, if you got to do it, if you say you got to do it, and then you're not doing it, then you need to fix that shit. All right? That's one of the reasons why I really like using apps that log in with your phone and scales and all that kind of stuff is we can track all of that data without the emotion, and make sure that you're consistently doing the boring stuff, getting in your steps, getting in the water, getting in the sleep, weighing yourself every single day. And then also that kind of proves to me as coach that you're invested in the process. All right. Lastly, number 5. Last one. This one's really good. This goes along with the priorities of wanting less. When you're analyzing what's going wrong or what needs to improve or how to get to the quote-unquote next level, you need to focus on what is bottlenecking your progress. Okay? So when you're a beginner, it could be, is it my food intake? Is it my sleep? Is it my training? Is it my recovery? What is the thing that is throttling my progress? So if you're training really well, you're eating kind of decently, but then you're partying and getting terrible sleep on the weekends, well, you don't need to fix the eating during the week. You don't need to fix the training. You don't need to find new training strategies. You need to understand that your big bottleneck is the partying on the weekend. That's your bottleneck. You have, let's call it 20 things that you've got to focus on. One of them is the bottleneck. So as a beginner, you need to understand that you can focus on the 19 other things and try and razzmatazz your way into more efficient, like 1% here, 2% there, 3% there. But the big glaring bottleneck in your process is, in this case, partying on the weekends. You can just keep everything else the same and you're going to get the same kind of progress, but you're going to get more improvement when you fixate on the bottleneck, which is the partying. Once you get that toned down, particularly if you're losing weight, okay, listen, I'm not going to party as hard, or I'm going to put some limitations, or I'm going to stick myself to 2 beers, or I'm going to leave early, or whatever it is, whatever your solution to improve this bottleneck, once that becomes not the bottleneck anymore, then at that point, when you realize, hey, listen, I've plateaued with my success, I'm not quite sure I've stopped my partying for the next 13 weeks because I want to get these results and blah, blah, blah. Well, then the next thing is find the next bottleneck. That's it. We see it in business, right? What's my problem? Is it lead generation? Is it lead nurture? Is it sales? Is it fulfillment? Is it ascension? Is it HR? Where is my bottleneck? I don't need to focus on fulfillment if my bottleneck is I don't have any clients, right? Or vice versa. Hey, listen, I'm getting a ton of leads in. I have 3,000 people on my email list, but none of them interact with me. So my problem isn't that I don't have the lead gen. I'm not nurturing them. I'm not turning them from people who have no idea who I am into people who want to sign up for my coaching service. I've got to give them support and encourage them and a pathway to success and all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you're working on your training, your diet, your accountability, your sleep, your recovery, your supplementation, what's your bottleneck? You need to identify it. This is your obstacle. This is the thing that's getting in your way. It is restricting any kind of progress. Do not focus on anything else. Just keep it the same. Really dial it in. And then until that thing becomes a non-bottleneck, focus on that. Improve it. Get better at it. Do not spend effort trying to, inch your way to 1%, 2% better results with like your clean eating during the week if you're throwing it all away during the weekend. Focus on the bottleneck. All right, folks. 40 minutes. Been really crushing it. This one's a good one. And remember, I talk about 5 high-level strategies that are going to get you to actually execute on the ideas. I have more of these. Maybe I'll do a part 2 sometime. But if you need help coming up with a strategy for you so you actually do the things that get you to lose weight, especially if you're trying to do something you've never done before, write in the comments, strategy. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to send you a little message. We'll chat on the phone, come up with a plan. I'll show you some of the process that I have for my clients to get them quick results. Long-term results, sustainable, make sure that the scale's moving, etc., etc. Again, strategy. Hope to see you soon. Hope to talk to you soon. Deuces.